Okay, we're looking at Pacific Port, a situation where we need to convert standard to secondary. And we're interested in Changzhou, and it's the afternoon ebb tide of the 5th of May, and we want times of high water and low water. So the first step is, well, we need to establish if we're dealing with a standard or secondary port. Obviously in this example it's secondary, but just to see how we do that, we go into the back of the tide tables, we find Changzhou with the ATT number, and we see that it is not in capital letters. And the nearest port in capital letters is Incheon, therefore Incheon will be the standard port to Changzhou as the secondary port. At this point, because it's a Pacific port, it's often useful to look at the time difference between Incheon and Changzhou, and we can see that it's plus 6 hours 13. Our problem is looking at the afternoon ebb tide on the 5th of May, so that's something to take into account when we're looking to choose our times and heights. So just looking at the day on the 5th of May for Incheon, we can see that 0704 and 1323 will be the times that we will use, because once we've applied the time correction to those for Changzhou, that will take us into an afternoon ebb tide. Okay, so when you look on the day for Incheon, it's not strictly true to say it's just those times. We must apply our time correction to make sure we get the correct values. So just to go back, step 1, we go in Changzhou plus 6 hours 13, take out those two corrections, and the good thing is with the Pacific port, of course, there's no interpolation. We simply apply the correction. Our high water times 0704, as we said before, 0704 plus 613, low water 1323 plus 613. So the two times we're dealing with are 1317 high water, 1936 low water, so that becomes an afternoon ebb tide. Now let's think about the heights. So 8.6 and 1.4 are the values extracted for Incheon. So heights of high water and low water. It's worth noting that we only calculate to 1 decimal place because we cannot be more accurate than the tide tables. There's 3 corrections to apply, and the first one is our seasonal correction, so very similar or the same as European port. Very important to remember, with this first seasonal correction for the standard port, we must change the sign. So if, for example, our value was plus 0.1, we must change that to minus 0.1. In this particular example, when we go to the month and we go along with our ATT number for the standard port, we discover that there's no seasonal change. However, when you're setting out low and high water values, starting with Incheon and ending with Changzhou, we must indicate the seasonal correction in our table to let the examiner know that we know it exists. Okay. The second correction is what we call a main correction. So you again go to Incheon in the back of the tables, and you'll see at the right hand side high water springs and neaps, low water neaps and springs. We need to extract these values and the values for Changzhou to do our correction. So it's self-evident for high water we're going to use 8.6 and 6.5, Changzhou corrections minus 6.7 and minus 5, and low water as we can see there. So let's look at the low water main correction. So 2.8 and 0.4, so we've written here 2.8, 0.4. Our value that we've got at the moment for Incheon low water is 1.4. Changzhou values to apply a correction, and minus 0.1 and minus 2.1. So 0.4 to 2.8 is 2.4, 0.4 to 1.4 is 1. We multiply it by the difference 2 and we get 0.8. So our low water main correction has to be minus 0.1 towards 2.1, must be minus 0.9. Then we're looking at the high water. We use 8.6 and 6.5. Changzhou is minus 6.7 and minus 5. And our high water value is actually 8.6. So in that case we must use minus 6.7. Coincidentally it goes alongside that, so there's actually no interpolation to doing this particular problem. So we've written down low and high water, seasonal correction 1.48.6. Now we apply our main correction, minus 0.9, minus 6.7, and that gives us the values 0.5 and 1.9 to carry forward. And then the third and final correction is the seasonal correction for the second report. Do exactly the same, go into the tables for May, look up Changzhou, and we find the correction is 0. We still put that in to let the examiner know we know it exists, but I've just put in dark print there. Please note we do not change the sign of this seasonal correction. So had it been minus 0.1, it would be minus 0.1. So now we've ended up with Changzhou low and high water 0.5 and 1.9. So that's how you would do the Pacific port. A little easier because of course the time correction, there's no interpolation, but that's how we would convert from Pacific secondary to standard. Just be a bit careful with the big time difference because it does affect the times that you're going to use.